Um, I saw this actually live. It was Germaine Greer talking about Shakespeare's wife. Extraordinary lecture. In it, she said, if you insist Shakespeare's plays were written by academics, you haven't read any plays written by academics. She didn't mean this to be quite the derisive joke that it sounds like. I think she meant that academics do not write plays that are like Shakespeare's plays. In other words, he's obviously writing differently than they do. She wasn't necessarily criticizing the plays that academics write, which presumably academics like to go and like to attend. I'm not sure. I saw a graph the other day. It was a breakdown of the American electorate into, quote, working class, end quote, and, quote, college educated, end quote. This was the divide on this graph, the distinction, no more nuanced than people of color and white, men and women. I then wondered how many speakers, podcasters, just expressors of thought I had heard during my regular grazings in the multiple places I go to hear that I might go to hear the working class, non-college educated. My brother watches YouTubers who do huge machinery fixes using massive lathes, etc. One in particular from Australia called Cutting Edge Engineering. I recommend it highly. The host seems to be probably early 30s, works alone while his wife films. Curtis and Karen are their names, repairing truck axles and the like, chunks of metal weighing thousands of pounds, a highly skilled person. He is Australian, so his humour is different to mine. He seems reticent, po-faced, seldom laughs, often smirks. But I do think he's always telling a joke. Lord knows how he votes. I think that is a habit of speech, really. I used to notice it in London, always telling a joke. They have no script writer. They do things I cannot do with their machinery. The YouTubes seem to be a hobby, perhaps with a desire to perform. I'm sure it ups his income somewhat. But that doesn't seem to be the obsession. It is hard work, time-consuming, editing, getting the script right. I really enjoy the show. There is a relaxation in watching a job getting done, being told how it's being done, having it explained, a practical material job of grinding, melting, welding, fusing, creating machines that are all around us every day. It's absolutely fascinating. So, and now the other day, Bernie Sanders says the Democratic Party has abandoned the, quote, working class. So, who are these people? Apparently, the graph says they are 55% of the voters, the non-college graduates who seem to be considered by the college graduates who are telling me about them to be not quite real people. This is quite natural. Tribal attitude as I see it in action, a myth attends it. The church told us long ago that scholars are closer to God, and it has stuck. And it is as unfounded as it ever was. It is the great unconfessed echo chamber, peopled by the voices that criticize echo chambers. It is, in short, irrational as religion, as blinding and as accepted, and rings many of the same psychological bells as racism, and has been part of our way for thousands of years. Variously, slaves and European peasants have formed the ranks. I'm pretty sure the only place where I can be guaranteed to hear the thoughts of people not groomed by 4-year degrees is talking about the world that they inhabit and that they understand, is so far discussions among hip-hop creators. There are many on YouTube, which are just knocked down fascinating. They are speaking a language I don't speak, but they are describing something that I greatly, greatly respect. Poetry. Incidentally, I watched No Direction Home the other night, the famous Scorsese thing on Bob Dylan, about Bob Dylan, a colossus whose language as a speaker is reluctant, as courteous, as taciturn, as non-college graduated as can be. He is, to be silly, expressing rather than explaining, and acknowledging he is not good at it while he does it. Tupac Shakur, Bob Marley, Marshall Mathers, Eminem, Jay-Z, Eldridge Cleaver, Malcolm X, Sean O'Casey, and the coiner of the phrase working class hero John Lennon. All working class by the non-college definition. Just a personal short list of non-college educated influences on my life. Suddenly I find, assuming Baldwin went to college, but he didn't. High school too. Oh my, all my influences. I don't think my point that anyone could call this a list of working class heroes or otherwise. They could call it a list of not college educated. They could call it a list of massive poets. The language I hear on TV and podcast is not theirs. What language am I missing? When Mehdi Hassan says, yes, we should blame the electorate for Donald Trump, to whom has he spoken? Does he only hear people who talk like him? It is a language issue and can only be clarified, judging by my experience, by deciding that what anyone says has merit and meaning because they are always as complicated and profound or not as I. That Niall Ferguson is as inarticulate as any peasant when you realize he is lying articulately, or worse, is articulate with no awareness that he is lying. Lying, after all, is selling books. I have my language. I think it is quite normal for a non-college educated person who has worked in this working class sense most of my time. My big bunny has been made pretending to be a myriad of other people. This has led me to Shakespeare, an artist almost destroyed by universities, who teaches so much to us that we realize we already knew it after he said it. Most of my circle do not understand my language. Their education has not clarified my stuff to them. With rare exceptions, I cannot read a book anymore. I cannot understand the language except very lightly, though It's All Right Ma, I'm Only Bleeding made big sense to me at 14. So perhaps the upset and confused of the Majority Report, MSNBC, the NYT, the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, the self-christened good and great of our day might want to admit failure. Not a huge one. Thou shalt not be judged, though thou judgest mightily, but reserve a qualm, a misgiving, a paltry suspicion that you might, on some very, very essential points, be wrong. And that the pantheon of right might not be just what you think it is. You, Mehdi, never proved to me, and neither did she, that Kamala Harris was any more than not him. Misogyny won't fly. I voted for a woman. I know a dozen black women better at it than she, and she smiled her way through her justification of genocide. None of this means anything really unless one wants to think it. The status quo is what it is. Why Democrats lost the election will be talked to death, and all of it will be meaningless prattle of college-educated people because that particular indoctrination has such chasms of darkness left for its believers. All they can come up with is the Hassan notion. We let the stupid vote and paid the price. And if you are looking for evidence of fascism, that be it right there. It's okay. Call it war, that is what it is, but be careful who you assume your allies are. Kamala and Joe were not misunderstood when they belched their ignorance on Palestine, assuming we all shared those values. After a good look at the evidence, it might be time to consider the handicaps of the college-educated, the blatant prejudices and bigotries, and intuit what is obvious to the intuitive, the deep elitist conservatism of the enlightened prince. Offering me a mediocrity as my only choice and then cancelling my friends because they didn't agree, demanding that they share your hatreds and prejudices didn't work. It never does, and you should know that. You should have learned that in college, or resisted forgetting it. Did you not hear the thudding as rape accusations against Joe and Bill fell off the limo of American justice? Remember, the Constitution could have barred them all from office, but then how many of your heroes, writers of the document, would stumble there?